I'm Kim Zeller. I'm with Ray Graham Association.
Hi, I'm Roxy Kazitsky. I'm with IARF, the DD policy analyst.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Brown. I'm with Challenge Unlimited.
Jessica Peters, Transitions in Quincy.
Gus Vandenbrink from Search Center.
Sheila Lula, Clearbrook.
Dave Boggs, Clearbrook.
Susan Kaufman, Clearbrook.
The Clearbrook Road.
Right.
Michael Brave. Michael Brave from Southern Illinois Living Center.
Dale Morrissey, Developmental Services Center.
Melissa McDaniel, CTF.
Mary Kate Ambrosino, Community Services Foundation.
Steve Manning, Parkland Association.
Angelina Chromatic, Goldie Clover. Liz Butler from Goldie Clover.
Usually right here.
Tiffany Craig, Goldie Clover.
John Pigo from Goldie Clover. Take that, Clearbrook.
What happened to you guys? You guys are always up here in front.
I know.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're rebels today.
Yeah.
All right, wherever we want to start back.
Rick Torrance, Warren Achievement Center.
Cheryl Smith, Southern Illinois Living Centers. Nancy Davis, Mosaic.
Our Dykstra Trinity Services.
Stand back there.
Oh, John Lipscomb.
Pacing in the room. Okay.
Broad, Sharp Community Services.
Mark Rudolph, KCCDD.
Very good. All right. Well, thanks everybody for being here. The first item on the agenda is regarding the legislative agenda. Josh is not in the room. Do we want to wait until he comes back in the room?
Yeah, we can do that.
Let's do
Can
that.
you pass me one?
I sure
Forgot to grab
can.
it.
So let's move on to an update on Rule 116 and 115. Roxy, do you want to start here?
Sure. So if you grab the DD tracker from up here, it's the latest edit. I sent one out with the agenda before Thanksgiving, but this one has some changes on it. So Rule 115 and 116, that's been a 2-year slog, basically. And we're hopefully coming to the end of it. Yesterday, we had our DD Regulatory Advisory Board meeting about it. And it's what remains to just be discussed with Rule 115 is the sanctions and the monitoring and evaluation portion of the rule. So it took a very long time for members from EQIP. We video conference with them every time we have this meeting. They're up in Chicago. It's taken a very long time for them to come around to the fact that the 214 portion that Art and Kim wrote, which basically ensures that every provider puts forth a good faith effort to do everything they can prior to initiating the termination process, kind of like an insurance that for the department and the division that they know that no one's being dumped, that type of. So it took a very long time for EQIP to realize that existed for that reason. And so some of the portions in 215, the 215 portion, the part that's already existed, the actual termination process, didn't have to have all these extra hoops to jump through because 214 was that kind of insurance. So that took a long time. I think one of our 3-hour meetings, we got through 2 pages of the regulation. So it took a very long time. And now just the ending portion remains of the rule, that portion to go over. If you grabbed a sheet up here, this is proposed language for what the sanctions would be for a provider. We just started looking at that yesterday, but we have a January 19th meeting, and that's what we're going to talk about mostly then and decide on then. Rita Hoskin from the division, she expressed that what's written there is not enough teeth for them. They don't think that gives them enough teeth to make sure providers are, if something were to go wrong, if something were, they needed to have more that they could do than what, and her specific ask was, or what she would rather see is to penalize an entire provider, not a site. in what's written here is the proposed language is for it to just be for a site because we all thought that it was overly too harsh to do it the other way. The proposal now is that, or what we started talking about that we'll get more into in January is talking about, I think it's, which section? 440 in Rule 115 is the revocation of license, the licensure revocation portion that really does have a lot of teeth in it, and that a lot of you may be familiar with that part already. So we're trying to, instead of duplicate and create more hoops to jump through, to make sure maybe that can kick in from this portion of the sanctions, and so that I don't want to say that would be like their only way to enforce sanctions, but that if they're looking for more teeth, that already exists as a thing for them to use, that if they really need to go well beyond penalizing, a silicide or something, then they can do that. But that's the current conversation. Everything else in Rule 115 is being sent off to the Bureau of Administrative Rules and DHS to start going over that before they send it to JCAR. Currently, Rule 116 is already with the Bureau of Administrative Rules. So that is whatever that secretive process is. They've gone behind closed doors for the last couple months, and they're hopefully will be filing after the new year.
Roxy, question.
Yep.
When we've met here as a group, one of the bigger issues that we talked about was an appeal process for providers. We know that the people who get services have a very well scripted and their families appeal process, but not so much,
Right.
on our side. What is the status of that?
So appeal process, like after the sanctions or something?
Appeal
Prior,
process says we
before a
can't
decision.
serve Sheila, and we feel that we need to discharge Sheila because she's very unsafe and unsafe with others. And we say yes, they say no, and the way that it's been, no is no, so no is no is no. So part of, I know much of what we talked about in previous draft language was around that appeal process of what opportunity do we have to say, can you please reconsider your decision, and what does that look like?
So I know that before it's been discussed to have the appeal process be like with a panel.
Yeah.
But the division thought that would take too long to convene, and that could always be like kicked down the line, like date wise, if something were to go wrong, or if something, like you could always schedule it or cancel it or something, and that it wouldn't be as effective as, I believe the time frame for sending in a letter is like less than 2 weeks, and for the division to have a response back.
So do we have the opportunity to meet with the division? That was a question that I recently asked Rita, is that I'm not okay with just sending a letter and they send a letter to tell me again no. I would, yeah. So can you confirm or deny that at the last ED regulatory meeting, a conversation took place about a meeting specifically with
Yeah,
Clinton?
we
And
did.
Where did that go?
So that's still not, there were some people missing at that meeting,
Okay.
like on the CLIP side.
Okay.
And so we sort of like, we didn't skip it because we're like not done discussing it,
Okay.
but we sort of skipped it so that we didn't have to exclude anyone from the conversation. So
Gotcha.
that's still
Is
not
that
decided.
Still, does that still continue to be like a major issue for us?
Yes.
Okay. All
I
right.
don't think we have to be careful not to let it get too far.
Yep.
I also even think with
Yeah.
the sanction thing, I guess my question is, well, so if Rita, if we don't agree that
Yeah.
there should be stiffer sanctions, and Rita thinks there should be, then what happens? Because I think we should be careful not to be willing to increase the
Especially if we don't have a proper
Right.
appeal process to
Right.
talk about what the
Right.
issues really are, to be
Right.
heard, and then sanctions are imposed based upon some assumptions that may not be true.
I take a step backwards. I guess this whole thing doesn't make me happy. So the first thing I'd like to say is that I don't know if it's part of our charter to be members of that advisory group, but I would not accept that things would go to JCAR piecemeal without us having a chance to see them as a result of what went forward in that committee. So I'm more than a little honked off. We were waiting for all the meetings of DD Division to talk about appeals. That was the one thing we insisted on. My fear right now, is the rule's gonna go through, has changed nothing for us. I'd rather not have it if you want to do it. I'd say, throw it overboard, screw it. Because the whole point of this initiative was to help us discharge people who were inappropriately placed in our, there's nothing here that has enabled us to make our message clear. That was why we had all those meetings. I don't even know how it got to the advisory committee meeting. I kept waiting for these other meetings to occur while we worked out the tough stuff. None of the tough stuff is worked out. We're still gonna be screwed. So I'm not a happy camper in terms of where it is right now. I'm just gonna tell you that.
Okay.
So just a thought of probably just throwing a major wrench in, to a lot of the work that has been done. But I think in light of our conversation yesterday, with the inability to hire staff, is one of the reasons that we can move people from our organization. Can it be because we don't have ample staff to serve people safely?
I put it in the rule.
They'll tell me no.
They tell you no right
But
now.
it's sort of like I'm kind of like Art, that I'm a little honked off about how things has gone. There was language that we had all worked very hard on, getting input from all of you. And then when it went the route of the DD regulatory group pretty abruptly and swiftly, it came back with a lot of that language missing. So, I expressed to Roxy, and Roxy, took that and ran with it. But some of the language that we tried to put a little bit of teeth in, what we could, came back very diluted or deleted in its entirety. So, have been able to kind of refocus, our efforts. And the conversation Art and I had with Rita recently was there has to be a meeting. It can't just be this exchange of here's your letter, here's my letter, because you and I both know it's just going to be a standard format. We're going to continue. Right. So there needs to be an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation at the very least, very minimum.
My anger is that, Roxy.
No.
We were, I don't know who all was present, but I know Kim and I, for example, said, tell me those scenarios where somebody could be discharged from community provider. They couldn't give us one.
Not one.
We said, we'll give you a month. That's what I think I was waiting for. I want to know, did he push him down the stairs? Did he beat the shit out of them? What happened? They couldn't give us one. So I said, I'm not moving until you tell me when can we discharge somebody. Then the next thing I know, it's at the advisory committee, and we never finished the story.
No.
So like I said, I'm more than just a little pissed off in terms of, we put a lot of months in. So nothing good will happen as well. So somebody can say, we revised Rule 115, for what? For what purpose did we revise it?
Well, and we did the work on putting some assurances in place for all of you to make sure you do the right thing, but then where does that come on the other end? That's kind of where it's, let's just go back to business as usual, because the fact of the matter is that they get hung up on, well, where will people go? There's one possible, thing, Roxy, that maybe you can help me here to describe. It's my understanding too, that Rita is pushing for a differentiation between discontinuing services from a provider and termination from the waiver. And the appeals, I guess the right to appeal is different under those two different sets of circumstances. Is that something you guys have talked about at the regulatory committee?
The difference between those appeal processes?
The difference between I discontinue services at Ray Graham versus the person is terminated from their waiver services.
We talked about that in the beginning in the context of like Equip for Equality. That was like a big sticking point for them, because they would always say, well, the person, then they're not going to get services. And we're like, that's not what it is. You're just getting discharged from that particular residential part of your services. You still have the waiver, which then are both, I think it was our suggestion that be put in their initial waiver letter, so that they know that this stays with them, like right off the bat, because the termination process can get confusing. I'm sorry?
There's an administrative hearing, the judge said.
Right.
You cannot terminate someone
From the waiver. Right. And yes,
So
that we talked about that too. And so we were confused why there was confusion. Yeah. We were confused why, like Equip, for example, was worried about that. We pointed all of those things out.
So I mean, I think that really changes the way that we look at the appeals. If we know the appeal process now, it goes externally to HFS. Is that who does it? So if people cannot appeal to HFS because Ray Graham is terminating services, but they are, the division is going to help them be placed at another provider like Clearbrook. If that's not appealable, you can't appeal that through HFS any longer, then that looks different. So I mean, I think that there needs to be kind of this, I think, greater understanding for everybody to know what's what.
So
Yeah.
this is my take.
Okay.
I think that Rita is probably confused, thinking a good thing happened to us.
Yeah.
Because a parent can no longer appeal
Yeah.
a discharge from a provider.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm waiting for, if folks don't pay good attention to that, when that draft rules out, JCAR is going to be overcome by parents saying, I have a right to an appeal.
Yeah.
It was never my intent to take an appeal away from a parent.
Right.
What I wanted was my appeal with some arbitrary person said,
Yeah.
you don't get it. So when they talk about having a reconsideration like OIG, that is absolutely worthless to me. I'd like to make a specific suggestion that we go back to that committee with the provision we want to add a criteria for discharging somebody from our organization. That is, as you suggest, we have insufficient staff to meet the needs of that person.
What do others think about that?
Right on.
Well, in some cases, there's no amount of staff that is sufficient.
Oh, that's true.
And in other cases, they give us the one-on-one funding, but we can't hire the staff
Exactly.
to do it.
Exactly.
So this is meant to
Well, and
bring
the environment
to
too.
a point to a larger conversation.
Absolutely.
The other thing is, I want to know what Fenton thinks. I don't care what Rita thinks. I like Rita a lot. I want Fenton on the carpet to tell me what his belief is about that advisory group.
And catch-22 is we don't have any supports from DHS to help us deal with people when they come out of state operating developmental centers or other places, and we can't handle them. There's no help. There's no crisis center. There's no mental health services. It's really hard.
So it's easy and most
Even
convenient.
beyond staffing, you can't
Yeah.
get the technical resources to help
Right.
support that person.
So it's most convenient for the division to keep people where they are because they don't have any place to put them.
Right.
That's really what it boils down to.
And the times we've been successful, it's been because the person's in jail and the justice system takes it.
Yeah.
I will call Rita today and stop the train.
Well, I think specifically knowing, I mean, that appeal process, I think
That's
my message
essential.
is that it is essential. That's really a game changer, what that looks like. And then I think, framing it that, our number one concern of our membership is the inability to fill positions within the organization. And, we have SILAs that are being staffed around the state completely on overtime. And when does that become, that is a legitimate safety issue, or it's emerging as a safety issue that we can't safely serve people?
So there's just gonna be that one criteria for discharge?
No. For the staff?
Well.
Oh, no, it's the same, some of the same, like the person is, a danger to themselves or others. The provider can't meet the medical
That's all
needs
in
of the
there now.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just be additional.
Yeah. And there
Yeah.
is another point that was added as a reason that a provider could move to discharge, is that if a parent or a guardian continuously takes actions that contradict the safety and welfare of their family member, which,
It's obvious they don't care what we think.
Yeah, it's obvious.
I know.
So now I think we have to develop
Yes.
what kind of strategy are we gonna put forward to deal with this? Because they don't really care, obviously, otherwise we would have been, no. So I mean, IARF's got to be a strategy of
Right.
how we're gonna fight this, whether it's JCAR, whether it's for individual legislators, I'm JCAR, whatever it's gonna be, we need to have a strategy.
Well, and I feel like, and correct me if please tell me if you don't agree with me. This is important enough that we hold the process up to do it right versus do it fast. I mean, this has been on the table for what, 5 years now? I mean, if it happens next week, I mean, it's been 5 years in the making. So,
10.
okay. So, I mean, I see, I mean, if we have to slow it down and say, you know, our membership has some concerns that we got to kind of work through, and they're not like, we're not trying to derail it, but you know, this is
This is
coming.
non-negotiable.
Yeah.
I mean, just, I'm sorry, Carol, literally, this goes on at least 8 or 10 years.
Yeah.
And the beginning point was to give us better criteria so that we could discharge somebody from assault. So here it is, whatever it is, 8 or 10 years later, it's still as fuzzy as ever was. And they can't give us an example of when they would support us, when it was so correct to discharge someone. So what we have is a practice then where we constantly move the victims.
Yeah.
And not the person creating the problem, which is
Exactly
insane
right.
in my way of thinking.
Exactly right.
Do they have any other things they're changing that they would have, that they have need to see the rule revised sooner than later? Or is, no?
I think right now, my honest opinion, the pressure is to get something done.
Yeah.
Just to get something done, saying, cross that one off.
Yep.
You just
So they
have to
do have that
stop.
problem, they can't give much
Mhm.
pressure.
Right.
We have to just stop.
I don't know that it might be. I mean, Rita's eager to start working on Rule 119. She
Yes.
started talking about that, which that's, you know, that can begin as well, but not at the expense of,
Mm-mm.
it's not a zero sum
Mm-mm. No.
thing. So,
Not,
okay.
yeah. I mean, to me, this is about, you know, people's safety and well-being,
yeah.
and Rule 119 is important, but it's not addressing life safety
So are we
issues.
asking Janet to draft a letter? Is that what we're asking? I don't have to draft a letter saying, sharing our committee words of concern.
Or
I can do
Rusty,
that.
you wanna,
I can send that. So Rita's going on vacation December 14th, and this is not funny, but it's kind of funny. We were joking at the regulatory board meeting that the whole division's going to shut down when she leaves because she's just this wealth of information and she knows everything. So I can do that today. I mean, we're not having a board meeting, so I have the rest of the day. I can do that today and send, you know, not just like a call or an email, but like an actual letter that this was a committee decision,
appeals,
that's a non-negotiable part of that rule,
appeals staffing issue.
amendment to a rule.
That's going to fit, right?
What would you guys, even if it goes to him, I feel he defers to her.
I think that's what the team is going to copy.
Oh, okay.
I mean, why are we fussing around with it? Let's go, let's make it an issue.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm worried about
I think that, you know, unfortunately, so that maybe the burden falls on Josh and Roxy, but I think there needs to be a meeting, just a quiet meeting between Josh and Roxy perhaps, and saying, look, we're not happy where this is going. We started this 8 or 10 years, and I'm not gonna repeat all myself, but say, here we are now, we have a draft rule that's all of a sudden going through very quickly. It doesn't address anything. They took a few things that Kim and I said at the beginning of it, which I think is sort of important, but it really doesn't change anything for us. So I'd like to ask, for you guys to ask, that what do you think is appropriate for a person to be discharged? And then say to him, he maybe needs to take it back to the advisory group. But I would start with that informal, but I like the idea of a letter saying, just so you know, there's a few unhappy campers about where we're at in this process with this content.
So Rule 116, remind me what were the changes there was around diabetes, insulin.
The administration of it, if it changed, I believe it made it broader.
Yeah.
That was a big
DSPs,
ask.
and-
Of course, if they're trained, but it
Yeah.
made it easier to have more people be able to administer it. Insulin and the EpiPen. Those were the bigger changes. I think that's why that rule was a little bit easier to
Mhm.
work on.
Yeah.
Both of you as you know, looked at it and gave a lot of input about that. So
Okay.
that was the biggest change with Rule 115, was broadening the ability to administer it so that it's easier.
Just want to make sure
Yep.
that Amos is on record of having received this.
Okay.
When you CC him, if you make to him, you CC them, I really don't care.
Okay.
But I think I worry that Fenton will take time for it to move up,
Yeah.
and you got holidays coming.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't want to even hear, I never heard about it.
Well, and I think
Okay.
the key thing is that we need to keep because it's my understanding with the DD regulatory group is that they're an advisory group. And then once it goes behind closed doors and the division decides to finalize it, and then it goes the route to the JCAR, right? That would be the next step. Then then we have a different.
Well,
ballgame.
first it
So
goes
we
to the
need
Bureau, Administrative Rules and Legal, and
And
then
then-
it goes to
So we need to
JCAR.
kind of keep it as a conversation probably in that DD regulatory form before they go behind closed doors with it.
Just want all the upstairs.
Yeah.
people to know what's happening.
Yeah.
That letter, not to, and you guys do the work, but it's important enough. I think it should be signed by Shannon and Carl. I mean, it should be the executive director and the president of the board. It's important enough that, you know, you guys draft it, you know what you want to say. You should get those signatures.
What's the, sorry, I can't.
Get really around the
It's
appeal.
an in-person appeal process,
Yeah.
that's a non-negotiable.
In-person appeal process is non-negotiable.
Well, if you recall, Josh, I mean, when we were talking, months and months and months, the appeal process for us was non-existent. So now I think in the last draft that I saw is that there could be an exchange of a letter with the provider and the director where I believe that you'll just be told no again. There needs to be some face-to-face discussion that's required if the division doesn't agree with us. Because I think that there's no way, shape, or form you can really truly convey and answer, have a meaningful dialogue without that face-to-face discussion with the appeal.
I mean, I would settle for, I'd want something greater than that. I would settle for the fact that
Yeah.
there's a face-to-face meeting. We can bring our evidence, if you will,
Yes.
and present it to him,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to a reconsideration letter that says, like he says, thank you, but there's no new information, the same decision stands.
Yeah, and if you recall, we had originally
We don't want the rule to go forward.
Right.
that, well, because initially we were talking about an external panel, so we were way over here saying we want something completely external to all of you folks. And they
Right.
said, no,
Yeah.
that can't do it. So they took it all the way back and really
Shorten the
kinda
time frame,
shortened
but
the
it's
time
still
frame,
letters.
And then we'll just exchange a letter and then you can make your case, Kim Zeller, but then I'm just going to tell you no anyway in my letter again is the way I interpret it. And I don't ever really have to talk to you, which is the way that it is now. So, I mean, that I think we kind of decided that's really kind of a deal breaker here. And then, before you came into Josh, or maybe you caught the tail end, is that, just thinking about our number one priority. I mean, there are providers that are staffing homes completely on overtime. When your overtime staff can't work anymore because they're completely burned out, when does it become a point where people may need to be discharged because there's no staff to work in their silo?
So it's additional criteria for discharge.
I think it needs to be put on the table. I know we want to get this thing done, but I mean, I think it's better. Now, I'm fully aware that they'll say, yeah, no.
Mhm.
But I mean, I think keep poking that bear with this point.
But it stopped the process. I mean, that's significant enough to me. As I said, I don't know if you were here, we gain nothing if the rule goes through as it is right now. We gain nothing, in my opinion. And we worked months on it.
We lose another 10 years, another year.
Yeah, exactly right.
I will say that the examples that, we all think that would make a lot of sense for them to give us examples of,
Mhm.
well, how would you decide yes? What makes this a yes?
Mhm.
That's prescriptive in their eyes and it holds them to accountable.
Prescriptive.
They won't put that on paper.
No,
I don't think
we
we can
we didn't
assume
ask
that.
you to put it on paper. We were in the room. That's why I thought that conversation was continuing.
Yeah,
And they agreed to do it. We gave them something. We did our part of the homework.
right. I remember that.
They didn't do theirs, so that's why I'm not a happy camp. So now all of a sudden they come up with some bullshit, why they can't say that, because everybody's gonna use that as an example.
Mhm.
Because I don't think they believe there would be extra concerns.
That's what I think too. That's why I said, that's why we gain nothing.
Right.
We gain nothing if it goes through this way.
Just keep the lid on the problem because it doesn't shift. If it is big enough, they give us a menu of what we can say.
Yeah.
No one else will serve them, so that's the problem.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is one more way to push the system for more resources. This is another way to do it. They gotta feel it.
I've let, in these drafts, I've let certain things go through just because I want to be nice. But there's another thing that pisses me off, because what it says
Yep.
The language reads that we as a provider will help them find the alternative, the person that's following their dream.
Right.
I don't think there's any judge who can say it's Art's job, Trinity's job, Clearbrook's job to find that placement. I didn't want that in there.
Yeah.
I let it go, but
Yeah.
only because I said, okay, how many times can I say you don't know what you're doing?
Yeah.
But it's full of crap like that. That's right. It doesn't help us. They'll check something off there. Let's say we got it done before the first of the year.
All right. So Josh, we waited on you for number one on the agenda. Yesterday at the board meeting, and as Carl alluded to, a lot of discussion was had about, the staff crisis, vacancy crisis, the inability to recruit because of the wage issues, and a multitude of other issues that's really kind of, I think, coming together to create this horrible storm that we're in, including kind of unprecedented, unemployment rates where there's more jobs than there are people, just around the state right now. So, very clearly, that is the number one issue for IARF and for all of us. However, as things work, there's, legislators or, within the General Assembly that may have the appetite for supporting other pieces of legislation that would benefit people with disabilities or our provider community. So Josh has prepared, and hopefully everybody has it, the draft legislative proposals. And I don't want to speak for you, Josh, so please feel free to jump in here. But I think looking for some input from you to know is, does this clearly define input that you've already given and feedback that you've given around priorities? And then sort of what do you think are some of the more pressing issues? And Josh, take it from here.
Patient 0 right now, so I'm just going to stay over here.
Okay.
This is the document. It's got legislative proposals listed on it. I think the very first dot point is set aside as a placeholder for future discussion of the work group on how that group recommends to the board we approach a direct support professional wage piece. Everything beyond that, except for the Comprehensive Mental Health Investment Reform Act, are ideas for potential legislation that Roxy queried 2 members of this committee, and based on the feedback we got from members of the committee, we compiled this document. What is being looked for at this time is as I gathered from the meeting yesterday, is your review of this document and your recommendations as to which of these items, if all potentially, but which of these items is it appropriate for the association to pursue in the form of legislation and to prioritize them. I mentioned those the way I did because on here is, I think, 12 potential bills, which is not easy for any one organization to get introduced or to advance, especially given that the majority of our advocacy is going to be on the wage issue. That being said, we don't want to discount the important nature of some of these other items. So what we are looking for today is some discussion, and we can go through all of them. I think there's time for that, of these to try to get some Q&A going on them. And the board is looking for a recommendation about which of the lists we should pursue in the form of legislation and how we should prioritize them, which will provide direction to Roxy and I and Cyrus about how we pursue legislation in the General Assembly. And if you ask me a question, I just stare at you for 10 seconds. That's kicked in. So.
Where they have kicked in.
Where they have, yeah, right. Okay.
Everybody's kind of looking over it, so you right here, Lila. So as you read through and thoughts start coming to you about what you think is kind of most important, just feel free to speak. start talking.
I have a couple of thoughts. I guess one has to do with the opportunity or timing of things and what things cost money versus not cost
Mhm.
money, which I think makes it a judgment call on staff. But I would just say something about the DSP's passing in DT. To me, it's not a cost issue. So at least the roadblock on that one, I don't think it's going to be dollars. It's going to be nurses or something else. But,
I think in that same vein, the children's group home licensing
Yeah.
has also kind of that element is the money element is in there, and it's a streamlining thing that could only be beneficial and could help. So short term,
The only thing about the DSP passing meds, it's minimal, but we do get reimbursed when we get reimbursed from training for DSPs right now. So that's the meds assessment. So there will be a little financial, but it's not very much. But I don't know.
I would do it without reimbursement.
Because you can get it back.
Yeah.
Get it back in the nursing side.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just.
This is better than driving them around in the car and bringing them in the car.
Playing the game.
So since the personal needs allowance was a major issue last year,
Yep.
we're dealing with that now. I mean, is it okay to presume that we need to put that to bed?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Josh, I guess I need a little bit of clarification. We all agree that the DSP wage increases are high priority. The rest you're saying is prioritizing these other things. They're all very, very important. Is the purpose of prioritizing to give you guidance of which to work on first, or is it to say you can't work on all of them this year? Because they're all important. I mean, you could almost say there's equal important. You know, how could you argue that the personal needs allowance, as much effort's been put in there, is not a very high priority? But so I guess I'm asking you what you're really looking for from the committee here today as far as prioritizing, like what rings our bell, or is there certain things that you say you just can't get to? What's the
Thank you for
purpose?
asking it that way. Here's how I would describe it. Knowing that the wage issue, here's how I would describe it. There are going to be actions this spring that we'll be asking of member agencies in your networks to advocate on behalf of heavily. And based on yesterday's discussion and some outcomes of future conversations, I presume that that is going to be almost solely focused on getting the message out about the workforce issue. So but knowing that these are other important issues to members of the committee and to members, what I'm getting at is for purposes of trying to get bills introduced and working behind the scenes with legislators and staff, maybe not on some front-facing campaigns with you guys to try to get things done, maybe working with some individual agencies along the way. What are some things that I can try to get introduced and we can try to get moved along and maybe even secure while we're out there working on that major number one issue? And that's why the prioritization comes in place. Frankly, that gives me cover if I'm able to get some of these introduced and some I just can't. I want to make sure that I'm getting the right ones out there in the General Assembly so we can begin to work on this, because sometimes new ideas take a few years to pass the General Assembly. So that's kind of what I'm looking at in terms of the prioritization. It helps us sort.
It helps. It helps.
Other thoughts? So Josh, what do you have there on your short list that everyone is, what did
Right
we
now, I
hear?
just have kind of with the three items that people mentioned, which
The
is
P&A.
advancing person-centered communities in practice. There wasn't. I'm looking for maybe some of that discussion about some of the other items that are less important. We need to make sure we get those introduced in those three. And
I mean,
just kind of sort it from there.
Yeah.
I'm almost looking
The
by
streamlining the OIG investigation.
I would say that regulatory reform is important and looking at the ones that impact most people.
Yes.
Well, with the OIG investigations, it's not like it didn't used to be streamlined, because it was. When they first started OIG, we would get responses back in 6 weeks.
Right.
So it's not like they didn't used to have a system that worked. They did. And then all of a sudden it just quit working.
Right.
So, that's, to me, needs to be addressed.
Probably staffing.
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
and
It is.
There are more OIG and there's less people.
When we had our meeting with them in September with Bill Diggins and Director Michael McCutter, they, I don't want to make an excuse for them, but they said that it is worse than before the staffing issue. They're like 30% vacancies or 35%
We
vacancies.
understand that.
Yes. And they're hiring the way because of the budget stalled. I think, Josh, can you talk more about why they're hiring is stalled? It's like taking,
CMS process to hire is a bit.
well, and it used to be long and now it's really long. Like it takes like 6 months, something ridiculous. They can't hire on time.
It's probably not wrong if they were had a full complement of investigators, things would happen more quickly, but they don't.
Yeah.
So.
And they can't
sorry,
hire
guys, we can't make it
quickly.
better, but don't put any timelines on us.
Yeah.
Right, really what this legislation tries to do is shine a light on that issue. I mean, if the result of that is OIG gets more investigators, isn't that a net positive?
No.
Well, they sent a major negative message though, when they said, we're no longer gonna provide training to you people that are gonna do your own in-house investigation. That's totally off base. If you've got all the other problems, that's all the more reason they should take the time to train, teach our own people. Instead of putting it back on our back, that we need to preach them.
I think both of these things awful benefit them in some ways.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
they
the
don't
message.
have the people.
It's one thing to say you don't have enough people in the short, like. all
Solve
the
their
rest of us. Now
problems.
say we're gonna duck back on you and not
Right.
let you help us.
I think this can also help save money, both the
Exactly.
regulatory
Exactly.
reform, which I think would be easier to get through than one that costs money.
That goes over their head. Somebody prepares this.
When we tried to like poke them about how their investigation process goes and why takes so long and, to get back to you guys. And they said that even if they hire more investigators, that the process would still take a long time because like they have their investigators and it all funnels down, but then at the very bottom of the pyramid is their admin that processes it. And that's like not a big office.
That's why all the trivial things have to be taken away from us.
Exactly.
Right,
And then,
just don't
yes.
take all these.
Right,
The
that's
important
the drawing part.
Exactly.
That is insane what they will follow up on.
That's right.
And the same way with combining golf and FIFA,
Right.
do the important stuff.
Yeah.
And I think with Rule 119 and some of us going through that and realizing how bizarre that rule really is, in terms of what it says and where we are today, I just keep going back to thinking, this is what bulk does. This is their baby. And as that continues to evolve, it's going to be very interesting to think about what role does bulk have and what does licensure look like when you're talking about licensing does not just attach itself to a building because it's all focused on a building. And so much of what's in 119, the light has been shined on the fact that that's already covered in the home and community-based waiver now with other ways that we monitor that in the system. So, I think that, the vehicle to really maybe evaluate those roles further, bulk versus VQM, could be with some of the Rule 119 changes. You just got to keep asking the question, like, well, what are you going to do?
The strategy,
Right.
So I make a distinction, and I don't understand the legalities of it, but so for example, combining bulk and VQM, to me, that would be a bill that we would introduce for a show, in a sense that, because I don't know if this is accurate or not, I would think that the Router administration would say, we're not gonna fund that one anyway, we just combine them ourselves. But by making it legislation, you raise the intensity of that issue. I feel the same thing about the DHS OIG. There's a lot of things that they have a gal that works for us, says they can't do anything, but procedures can be changed. They just change them themselves.
Right.
So that I contrast different than the personal care allowance, which really needs legislation.
Yeah.
So to me, I would say I'd be comfortable with you picking the right mix. Where you think the resources, or let's do that for a strategic, but yeah, we really got to focus on that. But the that gives you any direction, I don't know.
And I think timing too, right? I mean, some of it's kind of what's happening and what's people are interested in.
Yeah, I think one of my questions would be with legislators, do we know what there is an appetite for, an interest for?
They're like the rest of us. I mean, some of them will be more aggressive to pursue some new ideas. Others will not be allowed to do it. I mean, that becomes the fun, hard part about once you prioritize a list, figuring out who you go to. Some of them I'll rely on you guys and your relationships to help make that happen. Like this, I've already talked with John about Pingo about the group home licensing stuff. How we should probably work with his state senator to try to get something out there. I know Dale and you have some of your guys that may be more aggressive about wanting to approach some regulatory discussion.
Josh, I think that, speaking to the DHS OIG, I think it ties to our workforce issue too. That's why I think that is an appropriate word, because whenever we have people that are held off on the sidelines for weeks or months, when we know it's basically about it, we can't work, that really impacts our workforce too. And we never know what can come back. So that's why I guess I raised that to a little higher priority.
When you said that you mentioned you used to at one point in time get timely responses. Were they as did they go after all the stuff that they do now?
I can't say that we've always had internal investigators and they've never really utilized them. I mean, they used to, because I used to be one. I think in the 5 years I was an investigator, probably they let me do one. You know, the rest of them they did themselves.
Yep.
But yeah, 99% of ours come back either unsubstantiated or unfounded, and they take 6 months to a year. And then, like you said, these people are reassigned, and if it's physical, then they're totally off. I mean, that's ridiculous when it's and then they come back, literally will come back unsubstantiated or unfounded. And you call them, they go,
all
that
lengthy lists of then recommendations too, which I think the whole formulating of those, which I'm not really sure is in their purview, is also time.
But no, I don't think from our perspective, they're not taking anything that they didn't used to take, because they literally take everything.
Yeah.
When anything we call in, they take. Because I think they're afraid not to take it.
They are. They're really afraid. They are.
They just say, well, we'll just go ahead and take that. You know, and it's like.
And the investigator comes out and I'm like, this is ridiculous for me doing this, but they took it.
But that's where I think we can complain. I mean, it's like, I don't know, maybe you guys have better luck than me. So you have this one guy, his favorite thing is to call OIG and say somebody did something. So now here's the 19th call. It's been unsubstantiated 19 times. Tell me why you take it to 20th. Wouldn't you put it in a different file? And have a different, say, that one you guys should review before you get back to it. But they don't. And so they create in some ways because they hide behind their own rules interpretation, because they are covering their ass. That's what has to do.
It kind of gets more complicated when we just do day programming, when you have public health involved on the ICFP side.
Sure do.
There's all kinds of crossovers in that as well too, and the two systems to me don't make any sense either. Abuse is abuse, neglect's neglect, whether you live in ICFPD or so. That's just further redundancy.
Yeah, and there is no interaction or coordination at all between those two. You're right.
We, in several of our meetings with them, we talked about how the IDPH process is one that you guys are all favor and are more familiar with, or you're familiar with both, but you favor it, and it would make more sense for it to just be the same. Why can't it be the same? And they maintain very strongly that everything that they look at is still different than IDPH, and we can't do it that way. And yeah,
I can tell personally, perspective wise, the difference between those two that I would prefer OIG is it's the individual client versus the individual staff and the decision on that. Whereas IDPA, we've had drivers who there's been an allegation. Yeah, they come in, it takes them 3 days to do their whatever. And we've turned it into OIG too. They have to turn it in both. They make a decision that driver can't ever drive for any of their homes ever again, kind of thing. And OIG will come back unsubstantiated and they still won't reverse that.
Yeah.
So, but OIG at least
Yeah.
lets you retrain, they let you, say, okay, you can work with other people, you just can't work with this individual.
Yeah.
Public health, they don't.
Okay.
You will never ever pick up any of our clients
Ever
ever
again.
again, kind of attitude.
Any other feedback for Josh and Roxy on the list? All right, hearing none. Life choices discussion.
The statewide meeting for all the teams and any other stakeholders was in November, at the beginning of November. Some of our members, John was there, you were there, you were there. And I think Sheila and Susan, you guys were there. So there was a good number of our members that were there. I would want to know what you guys thought about that. I know what you thought about it, but I still would like you
I
guys.
thought it was
What
very
did you?
unsettling.
Very much so.
You were
They
there,
are
that's
just
right.
Going ahead with this, and there's absolutely no funding to
No.
do any of this.
No.
But yet they are on the advocacy bandwagon,
Mhm.
all this, the flexible day programming and the, separating the housing and all this. We're all for that.
Right.
But how are you
We're gonna
funding
do all
this?
of this with
I
no
walk-
new resources.
Right, I walked away from that. Oh, really? They're gonna get away with this.
Yeah.
They're gonna forge ahead with this with absolutely no idea.
He said no new resources.
In the very beginning of the meeting.
Right, but then they turn around.
Right at the
"Oh,
outset.
Oh, my goodness.
Director Fenton.
That was very upsetting.
All this individualized, customized. No.
I don't think that it was I think it was on purpose that every team leader that came up there to give their report finished their report by saying, this is what we were told to do. So this is what we came up with, not to make sure that people didn't confuse that this is what they want to do, but this is what the charge of their team was, and they're on this team, and so they're, fulfilling their duty, and
You're
that's
right, they
it.
did. That
Almost
means
every
one of us said
single.
Our directive was.
Right.
And this is what we did. You're right, they did.
It's in the department for months. And we have no idea what's going on with it
Right.
in many cases.
I just thought it was very frustrating because every team were so proud that they changed 2 forms or something. I mean, I just did not understand why I was there. They did not look ready. And everything ended with, well, it's in draft.
And it's happening.
I don't know. I mean, I really just, I did not see the purpose of it.
No, and we
I-
can't
it
fill
looked like
positions we have now.
That PASS or whatever is working on restructuring some of what they do. But I don't know, it seemed like a big group of people and I kept thinking there'll be something coming and there wasn't.
It was over.
Yeah, and it's like,
Meeting's
how many
over.
times can you clap because somebody changed a word on a form? I mean, it just seemed operational. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what the state has to do, but I mean, I know what you're saying about that one part, but the rest of it just, I don't know, I was completely confused about why they had it.
Add to what you're saying, I have my own few things on things, but I said, knowing that project was funded by Illinois Planning Council,
Yeah,
and knowing
Sheila
that
was there.
contractual agreements to me, I think why you saw that pressure was to say, we've done that part. My fear is that the Illinois Planning Council may take bits and pieces of that and fund that
Yeah.
with the idea that it'll be annualized going into the next fiscal year. So that's how I'm watching it, to see, okay, what will anybody say? Let's try that. That's $300,000 or $400,000. But you have to track where the money came from, and the consultants in the room who directed that are paid for that.
Yeah, they're sitting right there with the department.
Right.
I mean, they were all
Mhm.
right there together. You didn't know who worked for the department, who was the consultant, who was Sheila, you know.
And they spend a couple, I understand they spend a couple of days training the department staff.
Mary Lou
I was
Bourne is
there.
now part of NASD as of yesterday,
So
I
why
think.
why don't we take the 11 expired terms on that council and give them 11 names we want to replace them?
And that should be taken to the router administration.
The
Like,
DD
that's
council?
that's
Is
where
that what you mean, the
that's-
DD?
I think Josh told me, right, Josh?
There's 11 expired terms,
Expired.
and they break down, there are 5, it's a big council, as you know, and it's all, for the most part, except for statutory ones appointed by the governor. But the expirations are 5 parents or relative of an individual. There are 5 expired terms, there are 5 actual persons with an ID. And then 1 agency representative, like Jeff's term, he was on the council, it's expired. So there are 11.
I think we should make that a priority. Let's fill that. That'll change the direction of that all this bullshit.
Interesting.
Because
Get on with Tourette's.
Well, I mean, how many of your staff are being yourself staff?
We can pack them. I think we should.
I think so too.
I really do. That'll stop her cold.
Well, and I think that some of, what Life Choices has been working on, philosophically, good stuff. But when in light of everything else that we've been talking about, it is so completely out of touch with what the real issues are and the priorities are. You can't have any of this stuff until you have staff to work in people's homes or with them during the day. I mean, that's the cold, hard truth, that once you kind of get in that bubble and you get all jazzed up about the Life Choices stuff, then you don't look at these other things. You forget to look at or you don't want to, because you can spend time in your happy spot, where you feel like you're getting something done because you don't know what to do over here. So, I mean, to me, it's sort of, just like what we talked about with Rule 115, making a statement that this is great philosophically, ain't going to happen. Don't expect us to do a damn thing, until
And there's
we get
a
some
lot
help
of
here.
illusion created about getting things done.
Yep.
I felt that. And then, the small changes that have been made with respect to the.
That's
tax,
all
we've gotta
fine,
follow
and that's
my
good.
ISCs,
ISCs,
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah, they're
which is all
ISCs.
good.
Right.
But the only thing I think we might be able to use that a little bit, and with respect to, Josh and his question about priorities, is that, if there are things on the agenda that can be pushed forward to continue the illusion that things are getting done, but they benefit both sides. I mean, it seems like they really want to, that was the whole.
Yeah.
I'm concerned that I keep hearing Life Choices like it's the be all, end all.
No, it's not a project. It is Life Choices.
And-
that's what I've been
well,
told. And we all now live
Yeah.
within
Yeah,
Life
but
Choices.
I think they
That's-
think it's
yeah.
something that
Yeah.
I can't quite put
Yeah.
in structure.
Yeah.
And that concerns
Yeah.
me. And I know I've talked to other people that know me, Nemus. The only thing he knew about developmental disabilities was
Life Choices. You are so
And
right.
I could not believe in that whole conversation that that's what he thinks
No,
is.
Life Choice is good. And then I know you got a crisis with your staff, but we're just going to have to put that on hold.
So, I mean, I think
Same
I
conversation.
have a real concern that at the department, they're so disconnected to what might need to
The
happen.
reality.
Because it's nice to have a buzzword, but if it means nothing, the end product is still nothing.
So I think it was at the end of the summer when or maybe it was September, right before the conference, where we had our last committee meeting and we really talked a lot about Life Choices. And similarly to now, you expressed that this is a train we have to stop and we have to tell the division that this is not, this isn't going to work. And both Janet and Josh have done that. I've done that when I've met with them in person, and we've sent a letter and all of that. And it is, yeah. It's clear that not everyone on the division is on board with this, but it's a train that's moving. And we also, I expressed this yesterday to Rita at the end of our regulatory meeting, that it was first a project, and then it just transformed into this suddenly very critical priority that everyone needs to know about. And
Well, it started with the ISC,
right, it grew to this huge transformation that ignores all the really important other things.
Well, the other thing I worry about is that it gives families and consumers this perception
Yeah.
of something, a world very different. And again, it goes back to the continual point of those things are great. We don't have anybody to do those jobs. And
Mhm.
they can't fill our positions. So don't
Right.
then disappoint families. That's come up before me. It's like, that's all great, but we don't have staff to do all those things, so, nor do we have the resources.
Right.
So was that information involved in all these teams, that we have no staff and we can't do it?
Certainly, I've been appointed
Josh
team
stood
four.
up
I mean, wasn't
and
it,
brought it up
is
too.
in the minutes of what they presented?
I don't know if it's-
For life choices, you mean?
For each team.
No. Definitely, we're gonna raise the point, but whether it's.
I have a
It
suggestion.
wasn't
Yeah.
emphasized.
How many teams? We have 5 teams?
I think there's 6, but 6, the one that's supposed to calculate cost has never
Oh, it's
presented.
never that.
Because it's cost neutral.
Yeah, right.
There's no need for that.
Which is bizarre. Why is that team exists?
This group should be charged with the job, Team 7, of how the bridge will be built between the existing service system
Right.
and life choices. So that everyone that's currently served in the system is able to avail themselves of everything that life choices has to offer and assures that they will not be left out in the cold.
Mhm.
And that is the reality that's being ignored.
Yeah.
It's like a crack addict. These guys are smoking life choices crack, and they aren't vaguely familiar with reality.
Well, and Mike
Right.
Bible stood up and said, what about the thousands of people that are being served in ICF?
Mhm.
And basically the consultant said,
We're not doing that.
That is the
We're
answer.
not-
That would be when Mike Bibo walked out of the room. He left. He
Oh,
left.
did he?
And
Oh,
he's
yeah.
like, we're just gonna ignore that because we don't wanna think
And
about
that's
But it
the
seems
answer
to me
you got
that
in
it
team
it
four.
should be a responsibility of this group.
Yeah.
To take that on and to be able to formulate a
Mhm.
plan
Mhm.
that allows for everyone to be served within the Life Choices project. Because what they want to do is they want to go off and start everything new.
I was gonna say, 'cause I think
And
saying
shiny.
we don't, we don't have staff and we can't do this isn't, they're just gonna go find somebody, they think they're gonna go
Mhm.
find somebody
Yeah.
to do it, just like they did with the ACT process.
Right.
You know, well, we can't do this with closing down these
Mhm.
these,
Mhm.
the state office. Well, they'll go just get all these new people.
Yeah.
We'll build all these 4-bed homes or 4 beds and you guys can just go live in your.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna change world
Mhm.
and we find somebody who will do it, but then it's so unstructured and.
Yeah, you just take a step back in terms of, I don't know if it's in the minutes or motions, but I'd like to go back to the point that was made for us to try to mobilize for our administration to fill some of those vacancies on the planning council, because I have a fear that the next thing is that there'll be, as I said before, other grants awarded that will continue without, is her name Mary Lou?
Yeah.
Without her, there's nobody in the division who knows what to do.
Mhm.
And she represents, the director of the planning council is
Mhm.
others. So I would like to, for us to seriously look at influencing that.
Good suggestion.
If nothing else, asking Brown administration not to allow out-of-state contracts.
Mhm.
And I think we should put on there, we want to fill those positions.
With the exception of Reed, the other striking thing was all the new players. He had to introduce his team. I mean,
Jamin now has an assistant. That's how committed he is to life
I
choices.
mean, it's like the turnover that they've had and the retirements.
Jama, who's now, she took Mary Spriggs' place as the coordinator, but I think she still
But she
got
got
one
pulled
foot into
back in.
BQM.
After John Knight, I mean, they're all.
But her new assistant, I think her assistant was, Jama was named director of life choices now, and her assistant is coordinator or something, and that was
So I would like
supposed to
know-
show.
I'd like to follow up and say, how is that position paid for?
Yeah. They did not talk about that.
I do like the idea about asking how the bridge will be built, because I don't think we can come out against life choices, because it is a good thing, and I know our organization, Mosaic, is really working not on life choices, but on personalized services.
Yeah.
And how we can do it with the funding we have in each state. And so I like that idea though, because you do have to get from here to there, and we all want to be here.
Right.
Right.
But boy, there's a
How do you
lot
do
of
it?
barriers in the way. So I really like wording it that way because it's more of a partnership.
Yeah.
then.
Yep.
So we can buy on philosophically, how do we get from here to there rather than making us look like we don't want to change.
Right. Well, and we've expressed that many times, like how you were saying that these are changes that everyone is pretty much on board with and sees the need for, but it's just like, why now and how? Because it's not really going to happen.
Yeah.
And then we were asking them for a projection, like a timeline, so that even a rough timeline, what do they want to kind of do in 3 months, 6 months? Where would they like to be in a year? Knowing those might change, but at the very least gives you a frame of reference where they would like to go. And Director Fenton acknowledged that when he acknowledged it, but we still haven't received one.
Yeah, I
So,
had it first.
I don't know if
The
they're
life
going
choices,
to.
I just don't think it has much meat to it. I mean, I
Right.
just don't think it's, I mean, it did the team four that worked on personal centered planning, they had some information, but the other
That's-
things were all
yeah.
about, we changed this form, they don't have to have
Yeah.
a site within 5 years.
And that's
Please, anybody, you could have done that in 30 minutes, just said, no, the psychologist, they would have told, I mean,
Yep.
these were not things to clap your hands and be really proud of. I mean, it was okay.
Yeah.
But I think the bridge, if you don't have a bridge,
How you gonna get there?
It doesn't have any meat to it. It doesn't, I mean, it's nice philosophically, but
Right.
it isn't. It may be a train going, but it's going nowhere because there's no implementation point.
Yeah.
And I think it bears repeating that they believe that this is gonna be cost neutral and that how they're gonna accomplish this.
Oh,
is
yeah.
to reallocate
They really do.
funds and allocate-
Dr. Fenton
Reallocating
literally
funds
believes
from
it won't cost
where?
any money.
And we don't have a form in which to challenge that thinking.
Yeah.
We need a form that allows us to challenge that
We're gonna
logical thinking.
change these rules a lot more than they're talking about now. If it's gonna be reality.
A forum.
Forum.
The
Yeah.
other important thing too is that the advocacy side, they view it as we're all trying to protect our turf as providers.
Yeah.
And so the type of message that we put out there is important because that's.
To be that
that's the
partner.
perception on that side.
Yeah.
This is solely to protect, yeah, it's totally self-serving, which is not the case.
No.
Which is so not true.
Yep.
That's why I like the bridge and maybe use no one left behind type approach. Let's start with the people we're currently serving, instead of talking about us and they, and start, now we'll do these new people, we'll do it a little ways, we'll be creative with that, instead of looking at the thousands of people already being served. We need to take life choices and start with the people we're serving now.
Agree. All right, good discussion.
Yeah.
The DD tracker.
Can I just go back? It'd be appropriate if Amos would be the life choices guru to ask her what her objectives are for the next quarter.
I think it's very appropriate.
She was actually absent from that November meeting. Her husband had a health issue, and so she was not there. But she was the one that kind of took in our suggestions, multiple suggestions and reminders of having that kind of projection of what they'd like to get done in the short and long term. And she was supposed to produce that. So I'm, that's, if that's what you're talking about, kind of, yeah.
We'd like to see what your agenda is for the next quarter going into the legislative session.
Right.
Just so we can.
Yeah.
Would she be open to coming to talk to our group?
Yes. She would be. So my fear with that is when I had Mary Spriggs come in and talk about life choices, they will come talk about things, but it's better for you guys to get a material, like a document that says things, because they'll come talk about it, but then won't bring anything, or they'll digress and then it won't be
Get
what you
their
want.
Canned statements.
Yeah.
Practice ahead of time.
Yeah.
There's tensions through all of it. You can pick any level you want, but the one I had chosen to pick was, if you look, I have nothing wrong or nothing against what we described here in terms of emphasis on person-centered planning. And for, I think it was in this room we asked Mary, how long do you think those interviews would take? Well, after CQ, about 2.5 hours. Common sense says, okay, for the just agencies to pull it off, we don't need 100 more staff. That immediately puts me at the position, you know what? I think our needs are greater here than your needs are, so I'm gonna fight you.
Yes.
You introduce budgetary
Yes.
bills, that's how
Yes.
raw it will become.
Yes.
Because when there's insufficient money, all those choices will be put in front of us. So I would like to have her sensitized to that right now, saying, So tell me what you want to do
Yeah.
first and how that will be funded. That's why I like to flesh her out.
Okay.
The other thing that will come up that she brought up in that meeting is that service facilitation and how they're gonna fund that. Because they got questioned on the Medicaid.
Yeah, they
And they're
did.
thinking
They
somehow
can't
that's gonna go through
mandate
the
the number of
ISC.
hours.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
won't get the waiver approved. So they
right.
have to come up with a different
So
way.
that's gonna be, talk about pulling
Because the whole home based
Robin
system
Peter,
hinges
all
on it.
kinds of
Exactly
things. They're
right.
gonna pull that money from somewhere
That's exactly right.
to do that. I know they're talking the ISCs.
My fear is that they, in their fantasy world, to the extent that our administration is involved, is that they'll say, when we close down one of the state ops, that's how we'll fund the Life Choices project, as opposed to worrying about our wages.
Yeah, no, when they do that, they need to fund our wages. That needs to be their
And
top
that's
priority.
how Mary Lou would.
Because we just all have millions of dollars that we're sitting on and doing nothing with, right? So, okay. The DD tracker, Roxy's recently updated it. We keep the DD tracker because we believe that these are the most pressing concerns of this committee, correct?
Yes. So some of the things on the tracker we've already talked about, the Rule 115, 116, life choices, OIG in a sense. We talked about that through the list of legislation. But I didn't participate in the conversation yesterday during the board planning meeting when Josh alluded to today during his speech downstairs that Cyrus would like, his role as employment
Guru. for
Guru.
IARF.
I think that if you take a look at this tracker and what it has been this year, I think for me in the last 6 meetings, it's become very clear that lots of things that you used to, or committees that used to exist, or work groups, or things that the division was involved in, manage long-term services and supports, the 1115 waiver, other groups, critical incident tracking, things like that, that you used to be happening and you used to receive reports on, you don't anymore, because those groups are defunct or the project, died or something. And so, sometimes I feel like I'm beating a dead horse with certain issues. Not to say that they don't bear repeating, but in many cases, I feel like maybe I'm filling an agenda just to have an agenda. And I think that is a waste of everyone's time when you come down here once a month. And having Cyrus, I don't know the logistics of how we would do this, because I don't think it's beneficial to split this group into 2 different meetings because so many things overlap. But if anything, we could maybe make our meeting an hour and 15 minutes and then split it in half, where part of the agenda, because everything is still DD related. It's not separate from DD. So what we could maybe talk about once he gets back from Mexico is combining the agenda and making it sort of like, either I go first and then he goes first, or vice versa, however that works, because I think that, and you guys discussed having subcommittees yesterday, which I think in a way those already exist. Cyrus has some subcommittees of things with employment and different employment verse and other things that he does with all of you guys. So duplicating that maybe doesn't make sense because you already work on that, and that could just come to bear every month, with updates from him. And I think that is something that is worth it and more worthwhile, because like I was saying, sometimes you look at the tracker and things at the end of it aren't happening anymore, or are, you don't need an update on that every month because there isn't one. And so I don't want to just put something on an agenda just to have it there when there's other important things like employment that's now just become so much more of a reality for everyone. So I hope everyone agrees with that. And again, the logistics of the meeting will work out and see how that goes. But I think that it shouldn't be 2 separate. It should be something that we just broaden the agenda in that way.
Employment doesn't really have a DD committee, but we don't really have that really specifically addressed. The 2 things I would say is I wonder if the DD tracker just needs to be kind of reevaluated in terms of what are the issues. Maybe there are some issues, or maybe there are more pressing issues.
Mhm.
There, And there are others that are on the back burner or just not existent anymore. And then
Right.
could Cyrus do something similar?
Absolutely.
Or-
I think that he would really like to do something like
Yeah.
something like this, where you'd receive the same sort of structure, the same type of thing. It's just, he'd sit up here too and he'd do his thing and then I'd do my, in that same way. I think that was his goal with that proposal he suggested. So
That would be great to have some committees, if you have something special done.
Right.
you could talk about it
Yeah. Exactly.
because there is so much overlap and everyone wants to know about it. So, one thing we haven't talked about that I have kind of a slight update on, HCBS transition plan. There was an extension filed to have it be due December 2nd. That was yesterday. We are meeting with I'm meeting with the division with some other stakeholders next week on the 10th about this. So Paul Bennett and Laura McCurdy, that used to be the ones in charge of all this, are not with HFS anymore. And as of, I think, September. And so it was sort of stalled.
Yep.
And they still need a 30-day public comment period. So that is what we're going to be discussing next week because there's still no new draft. And I've asked them repeatedly. I don't know who, there's two new people who I don't know their names at HFS that are now in charge of the transition plan. And I think the hope of the meeting next week is that that could be an official input process from stakeholders for the new draft. But I'm like, I can't see the new draft the day of. Like, you need to give that to me tomorrow, so I have a week to look at it before we meet. So that's a very hazy, unclear process, and I get no response back when I try and ask people about it because I think that for a while there was just no one in charge of it because Laura and Paul were no longer in charge. So next week is the meeting about that, and hopefully I will know more and I will send you guys all the details from that meeting.
Great.
Does
So
anybody know if there are states that have had their transition plans approved?
I don't think so.
I don't think there's been any.
Maybe one, but I'm just curious.
I haven't checked that yet.
Kind of plays out together because you got a 5-year plan and you're about to end the second.
Yeah.
And you have no transition plan.
Yeah.
I want to say there hasn't been yet any. I know and I can send that link out with the update next week.
I was just curious.
That you can take a look. There's a list of all of the states and you can click and look at each of their plans and then you can look at which ones received those CMIA letters from CMS saying, no, you have to rewrite it. And so there's all that in a grid, so you can take a look at that, but I'm pretty sure no state has had their plan approved.
I would also like to look into, I've heard this now twice, other pots of money.
Yeah.
I'd like to know where those other pots of money are, how much is in those.
Who says other pots of money?
Fenton said it a
Oh.
couple times, and so has this woman from, reports directly to Gina's, support employment. Sarah.
We're gonna reform employment through other pots of money.
How much money is in those other pots?
And part of what they were currently discussing was some of the present funds we're using could also be federally matched to create these pots. So that's what I'd like to know myself, again, because it's been said, we're gonna be really pleased.
Okay.
Let's hope.
Other pots of money.
That's the term.
Yeah.
One quick question.
Yep.
On the tracker. Tracking. So Pembroke has been part of the pilot group.
Yep.
Everybody for
And
a
I
while,
think
but
Michael
kinda
sent
went
something
away.
in like May.
Then Michael came back in this new kind of consulting role. Then it was kind of, again, get back in there and do your incidents and do you have data on like now where that's going?
I've asked him
I haven't heard from
multiple.
him in months, so.
Yeah, I've asked him multiple times, and I think that because he's contracted with the division, there's some sort of, well, he doesn't work every day, so he's not as available. And then also, I don't know that he's working on this anymore. I think that they have someone I think that they've just dropped it because I think he's working on other things. And I asked him about it because like before the summer, he was very much like, this is why I was hired again.
Yeah.
And then when I asked him about it, he's like, this is not, like, as you know, I'm contracted and this is not my sole responsibility type of thing. So I think that was reading in between the lines is this project is no longer happening.
To the waiver.
Yes.
And so
It was
the waivers are
comments,
coming
yeah.
due, right?
Right.
About-
Right.
Well, and
So
I'm
there's
just worried
gonna
that
be a
someday
problem.
they're just gonna say, here it is, you're gonna,
Mhm.
everybody's gonna do this.
Well, there's
Yeah.
gonna be a problem
That's
because I
I
think
know.
So that's
tied
what
to
it is.
waiver.
exactly what I
And if they've done nothing,
Yeah, because it's gonna, they're not gonna get
Yeah.
approved.
and I
until they
know,
do
and I
it.
sat next to Rita at that one meeting, and I know I asked her, and it looked like they had asked for an extension for both. And they thought they would get it, but it's not a lengthy extension, so, I mean, sooner or later, you have
It's gonna
to
catch up to
present
you.
something, or you're not gonna renew your waiver.
Yeah, right, that's what I.
Yeah.
I think unless it's lost precedence at federal, I doubt that.
I doubt that.
Other
I think
states
it's pretty
have them, and they're
standard.
Pretty simplistic. I don't
Yeah,
know why
and
they
they're pretty
don't- they don't
standard.
want it. They don't
You
want
just put it in team to be able to license traces.
There we go.
it. I'm sure. it's
Yeah.
not a life choice.
It's part of building.
Two
All
recommendations.
Okay.
right. Anything else? All right, well, happy holidays, everyone.
Yes. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Sheila, do I have your
No idea.
cell?
Paul like secretly went away. All of a sudden his email was bouncing back. I'm like, okay.
This job.
No one can tell me what happened. Laura's gone. I don't know. It's taken 2 months to, I don't know. It's such a mess. They can't keep anyone. No one's hiring. People are retiring. Like they're just dropping like flies. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I talked to you.
And you
No.
know, maybe
Dad or
in the grid format, maybe like really track and
Okay.
keep track of the.
Do we have a digital of your name or your signature?
And then we can still.
I will. I'll trace it.
Some things that are on our radar screen.
Okay.
What are we really doing?
Yeah.
What are we really?
So you
doing?
guys want
Because
that
things
letter
do
to go
change.
about
They do.
I think it goes to.
And some things.
Demas, Fenton.
Yeah.
She's his deputy, right? Yeah.
I just think we should be on record.
We should send that ASAP because she's going on vacation in 2 weeks
And then,
or in like a week.
right, 10 days, then it just reminds you, you're running a video conference on the 10th. Or a 1 o'clock meeting.
Right.
Yeah. My place is here.
From Clarkbrook. Okay.
Just let me know.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
Yeah, got the.
Okay.
Down in
So
here, right.
if you don't have a CSA, you don't go that later.
Okay. See you later.
Safe drive.
Happy holidays.
It's
nice because it's